Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Behavioral Psychoacoustics and Brain Entrainment, how sound frequencies can restore balance, reduce stress, and elevate your consciousness. My name is Stephen Dunn. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I've been really excited to be on a journey of exploring, opening, awakening through the power of sound. And we're going to get to explore frontiers of this important, growing field with one of the true pioneers and innovators in the field. His name is Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. He's the founder and director of the Center for Neuroacoustic Research. He's also a physician and a musician. So welcome to today's program, Jeffrey.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great. Well, we're going to dive in. We've got a lot of great stuff planned for you in this hour. And if you want to go further, we're excited that Jeffrey has agreed to teach a brand new program with Shift called Behavioral Psychoacoustics. It's all about creating inner peace, harmony, and healing. We'll share a little bit more about that towards the end of the hour if you want to go further. So, Jeffrey, let's begin our journey in time here together with a little bit about your journey into the frontiers of working with sound and behavioral psychoacoustics and brain entrainment. Very sophisticated terms for what we're going to be exploring today.
Oh, my story is a crazy one, and I don't have time to tell the whole story. I started out as an artist and a musician. I went to art school. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. And through a series of interesting things that happened to me after I graduated with some businesses, I decided to continue my sort of spiritual, esoteric journey into learning about this body. A textbook of universal law. So if I went to the equivalent of medical school, I went to chiropractic college and learned a medical level of anatomy and physiology, I would see more secrets, and I was not disappointed. When I got into practice afterwards, I was in Virginia for 9 years. I took out my first bank loan and bought all the top level equipment to convert my spare room into a recording studio to make an album as a composer, even if I give them away for birthday presents. But it became a giant hit. Went international in the first 6 months, and the rest is sort of history. I brought that back to the clinic and began exploring the use of sound clinically to change brain function and body function for healing. I had the largest holistic health center in Virginia. We had every kind of holistic technique under one roof that you could pack in there. But the sound work was turning out to be more powerful than everything else combined. And at some point, after about 9 years, I realized I should be doing this full time. Nobody's approaching sound from a clinical standpoint like I'm doing here. So I sold it all, sold the house, sold the practice, moved to California, opened up a big center. Then that became a giant hit, and that evolved into the present high-tech use of sound frequencies for affecting brain function, balancing the autonomic nervous system, things like that. It's sort of a high-tech approach to sound. Precise frequencies, accurate to a couple of decimal points, can make brain changes, manipulate the function of your autonomic nervous system, balance sympathetic, parasympathetic. We can see it on a computer screen. We can watch the sympathetic, parasympathetic live. And then that extrapolated out to bell curve studies of large population groups to see what kind of music works best for alpha or delta or creativity or the flow. What kind of brain entrainment works best for this and this and this? The development of something called nonlinear music. You would have to have a certain type of music if you wanted to put somebody to sleep. You wouldn't be using, heavy metal band music with a, So there's certain kind of music. There's hyper realistic 3D processing. There's something called primordial sounds. In 1990, I was approached by representatives from NASA and JPL. So that developed a whole thing with NASA space sounds and their effect on the deep unconscious mind. All of these just, one day you look in the mirror, you go, I don't know what the heck happened, but my life has officially become science fiction now. And Really,
I
I'm
mean,
telling you.
we sometimes use the term mind blowing, but you truly have a mind blowing background. It's great that you've done this leading edge work for so long. And I want to sort of dial back you. So, one of the things it sounded like is really important is the sort of precision of what kind of frequencies affect our neurobiology in a very specific way. So, maybe lay some theoretical understanding and what you've discovered in terms of how to precisely map intervention frequency of the outside with what we want to shift internally.
Yeah, my high tech work is two realms. One is EEG, brain patterns, and the other one is an advanced form of heart rate variability. It's a real time system that can see sympathetic, parasympathetic live on a computer screen, and you can adjust frequencies to balance the autonomic nervous system. And it's not just me that says this, it's the entire medical scientific community worldwide that recognizes stress is the ultimate cause of disease. It's not so much stress, it's the stress handling system in the center of my brain, the autonomic nervous system, the way that the sympathetic parasympathetic needs to be floating in a state of balance, whereas sympathetic parasympathetic are neither one of them active. I'm not fighting for my life and I'm not digesting my food, so the energy should be zeroed out and the internal physician program can be in place, monitoring all my systems and sending signals down to balance everybody out. The problem is that if this gets imbalanced and one of these two branches, usually the sympathetic, gets stuck in the on position, then I'm burning up all my resources and nobody's managing the store and all my systems are starting to drift. And that leads to disease. So the innovation for us with the system we call biotuning is to view the autonomic, see that it's stuck, find a precise frequency that will break that vicious cycle and return it to zero. And the internal physician program begins to work on its list and fix the things that's wrong with me from the inside out. It's really the big holistic idea that health and disease is not a big mystery that we're told it is. There's only a certain number of things that can go wrong with your body if you know your anatomy and physiology. But really, the core of it is my ability to handle stresses coming at me from my inner world and the outer world. And the outer world is a weird world. The 21st century is chock full of unimaginable levels of stresses that we're not even aware of. Electromagnetic fields and fumes and weird stuff in your food and news cycles, you know what I mean? Traffic jams. And the world is not the world your body is designed for. It was designed for 30,000 years ago. You wake up with the sun.
We didn't involve with any of this.
And you chase some little animal and that's your work day.
It is a really good point to come back to that baseline. Just how many things are foreign to the way we were evolved as humans. So it sounds like this is intervention of like shifting out of a stuck point back to zero line. So how do you diagnose what is it that is stuck in a loop and how and the specific kinds of frequencies that are going to do that reset?
The gold standard in modern medicine is heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is sort of misunderstood at this point. There's two versions. There's a layman's version and there's a medical version. Layman's version is a finger clip or a Fitbit or some kind of pulse monitor on your earlobe. That's measuring after the heart muscle contracts and squeezes the blood into the arteries and the arteries expand and contract. You're measuring that expansion contraction. But there's a lot of things standing between the heart squeezing and the little fingertip at the end of your finger. There's the integrity of the arteries, the integrity of the heart muscle, the integrity of the blood. So it's sort of you're getting the view, but it's not a sharp focus view. The medical version is ECG pads, electrical pads on your chest or on your wrists, pick up the electrical activity from the autonomic nervous system down the vagus nerve to the SA node of the heart that spreads the electrical charge. That's what you're measuring. You're not measuring the heart muscle. You're measuring the electrical event, which is a good sharp focus and gives you a real clear picture of the space between each heartbeat. This is the weird thing, is that HRV is one part of HRV is measuring the space between each heartbeat in microseconds. The more uneven those spaces are, the more healthy you are.
Hmm.
First time I heard that, I thought, wait a second, wouldn't it be the more perfect they are, the more healthy you are? But no. And that's a good lesson for all of us, that the ideas of perfection in our small mind has got nothing to do with the idea of perfection in the big mind of the universe and how it designed all of this, right? Really, imperfection is what's perfect. And the medical version with the electrical pads is measuring, in addition to that, frequency of vibrations in the electrical heart information in hertz. And that yields these bandwidths of vibrational frequencies. And in the medical version, that's what stands for very low frequency, high frequency. Low frequency is sympathetic function, high frequency is parasympathetic function, and it displays it as a graph on a screen where you can see the sympathetic function and the parasympathetic function live on the screen, fluctuating around. And then we can do some simple tests. If I hook you up and you're upright, gravity is pulling the blood out of your head and initiating a sympathetic response. Kicks the adrenals, raises your blood pressure just enough to equalize that, creates a new set point for homeostasis. If I lay you down and the sympathetic is a bit on from gravity, there's no more gravity stress now. We should watch it collapse down to zero. And it should do that in 3 minutes. And if it can't, then Houston, we have a problem that the system is not in balance. It can't achieve its homeostasis balance point, so the internal physician program can come back in place and manage my systems. That means that for years, or perhaps decades, I'm running this thing under the hood that I'm not aware of, that's burning up all my resources, and nobody's minding the store, and all my systems are starting to drift in their function, and I'm getting more and more sick. So that really is recognized worldwide as the cause of disease, the lack of the ability of the autonomic nervous system to reach homeostasis. And that's what this biotuning thing is all about. We can, because there's a frequency that will push the reset button and make it go back to zero. I don't know what frequency that is. So I've created a sound sweep program of all frequencies that play through your body through a special designed sound chair. Big speakers in the sound chair. And that's a frequency sweep from 50 to 200 hertz. So it's slowly untuning itself. And as it gets close to the frequency that works for you, you can watch on the screen the sympathetic responses begin to relax down and collapse down to zero. When it hits zero, the computer grabs that frequency that was playing at that moment and displays it. And now if we play that frequency accurate to a couple of decimal points, this will happen every time. Now I can give it to you to use at home. Every time you listen with headphones, bang.
And so that signature frequency is unique to the person, not just the state of being or the pattern you're working with right now.
It's unique it's a unique frequency that pushes in the clutch of the autonomic nervous system back to zero. There is, I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, number one, that the vibrations from the sound chair might be resonating and affecting the vagus nerve physically like a wine glass. Number two, I think more likely, is the origin of the parasympathetic nervous system, which drives the system. Parasympathetic controls the system. When I have a fight or flight response, it's actually the parasympathetic turns off and the sympathetic turns on by default. So the origin of the parasympathetic nervous system is in the center of your brain in a place called the hypothalamus, a little pyramid-shaped zone that has a lot of little tiny organelles inside with fancy schmancy names that I had to memorize. So the origin of the parasympathetic is this little neuron called the anterior hypothalamic nucleus. I paid good money for that word, so I'm going to use it. And out of that comes this branch that comes down, it exits out of the brainstem. That's called the vagus nerve. But the vagus nerve is just carrying information. the origin of who's making decisions at the autonomic level is that little organelle inside the brain. And the posterior hypothalamic nucleus organelle is the origin of the sympathetic nervous system. And the two of those branch out to everybody and control the system. But
so the most effective sound interventions then are targeting one of those two organelles, it sounds like.
No, you're targeting the parasympathetic nervous system. That controls the system. Parasympathetic controls the system. There's interesting ramifications that come from this that we've discovered because we have a patent on this real-time heart rate variability system. Nobody else in the world has got one. The medical system uses a snapshot. They take a 5-minute measure, crunch numbers, pop up screens. So you can do a before and after. But that wouldn't give you the ability to find out what frequency to use to balance the system. Only a real-time system would help you do that. Right. As soon as we find a frequency, now we're in the law of the physics of acoustics. Right? So if I ping the wine glass, actually I have the wine glass. If I ping the wine glass and I hear that note and I sing that note, the wine glass vibrates. But according to acoustic physics, any octave of that note will make the wine glass vibrate also. And an octave is 1/2 the frequency. So if this is attuned to 100 hertz, 50 hertz will work, and 25 hertz will work, and 200 and 400 and 800 will all work according to the law of octaves. Also, the law of harmonics. Any harmonic third or fifth or 11th, right, will also work, but not quite as effectively. Same thing in your body. If I find a frequency that balances your nervous system, every octave of that frequency is also going to work. And if I calculate the lower octaves down to 20 hertz, I've got 5 octaves to play through your body, through this sound chair, to activate the biggest sense organ in your body, the skin. The vibration sense network, vibroacoustics. And there's 4 skin sensors, trillions of them in my skin that sense vibration sense between 0.3 and 500 hertz, back to the posterior spinal cord, up into neurons in my brainstem, separate system. So if I combine headphones with the sounds 20 to 20,000 hertz, and below 500 is coming through my body to activate this, I'm synchronizing up these two systems. If I continue my calculations down below 20 hertz, I still have octaves. They go forever. I've got brain frequencies now, and they're brain frequencies accurate to a couple of decimal points in beta and alpha and theta and delta and epsilon and gamma and all the rest. Now I have key frequencies I've identified for your brain. And if I use something called brainwave entrainment, particularly with binaural beats, that most people have heard of, and if you don't, that's what we could talk about. But if we have 2 tones slightly out of tune that create a beat, and the beat is a brainwave speed, and the brainwave speed is one of these octaves, let's say in theta, precise theta brain frequency of 5.23 hertz, and we entrain to that, we see balance and homeostasis on our screen in the heart rate variability. We see that we can manipulate the function of the autonomic nervous system with brainwave entrainment. That means that there's a certain specific state of consciousness that causes healing in my emotions, because that's what gets healed during dreaming sleep in theta. That's where emotions get healed. Mental functions and self-defeating belief systems get healed in alpha, a very specific frequency. We can pick the lock of that program and make it run. Delta, physical healing. Epsilon, metaphysical experiences. Gamma, higher brain organizations. All of a sudden, we've got a whole smorgasbord of frequencies that we can pick. And some of those frequencies are associated with extremely high meditation states. Gamma, it's got a healing function. But the Dalai Lama showed us in 2001 with a research project that his monks that had been meditating for 30 years showed high amplitudes of gamma brain activity and an experience of universal empathy for all living things. So I'm thinking there's a meditation gamma brain entrainment soundtrack that can pick the lock of a neural program and make it run right now without having to try to answer the question of how do I meditate? The most difficult question, it's an impossible question to answer. That's why it's a koan. It's like once the sound of one hand clapping as close as you can get. I mean, sit and quiet your mind, but it's so far more complex than that. And it's the reason why something like this ancient technology was so powerful. This is a high-tech device, right? There was a monk, a nameless monk, the first guy who ever made the first Tibetan bowl. Somebody had to do it first, right? He walks out from behind the monastery with this bowl, and the monks are looking, okay, what's that thing? And so he's rubbing this bowl. And something about this tonality of the metal of this bowl cuts through the chatter and silences the mind for some reason.
So with a bowl like that, when you're hitting that, so before you were talking about how each individual has a frequency that can reset them, reset the parasympathetic. Whereas now you've been talking a little bit about how these different brainwave states, if you are work in healing different areas. So do we have unique frequencies within each sort of theta rhythm or alpha rhythm that are sort of for us, or is it more standard when you start to work into some of the other brainwave states?
Well, there's a beautiful, interesting thing about how the universe is self-organized. It's, on the one hand, global scales of any kind of thing that you want to put under the microscope conform themselves to the 80-20% rule. Right? 80% of the people on the bell curve respond this way. 20% out here are individuals that doesn't seem to work. Right? However, if you have an individual walk into your office, like I had, it's a patient walks into an office, all bell curves disappear. I've got no idea where you are on the bell curve. Now it's all highly specific. There's a highly specific frequency that works for your system. Because essentially, sort of from an esoteric standpoint, my body is made of cells, and the cells are made of compounds, and the compounds are made of atoms, and the atoms are made of, protons, electrons, and neutrons arranged on the periodic table. And below the atom level, we're in a different realm. I call the periodic table the wall between the two worlds. Newtonian worlds with objective reality, and the quantum world on the other hand, which is just parts. Protons, electrons, and neutrons, and they're made of smaller particles like hadrons and leptons and quarks and charms. And pretty soon you break the smallest particle open, and they were never particles in the first place. They were accumulations of resonant standing waves. At the deepest quantum field level, we have something that's in a state of vibration that we don't know what it is, forming an infinite number of patterns of standing waves, sort of like the Chladni plate patterns. John Stuart Reid, his work with the water being vibrated with sound waves, the cymatic patterns, basically is what's formed at a quantum field level. But those standing waves look solid, but they're not if you look close enough. But if you zoom back, they look solid, and they start to nest together and stack together and make something that looks like a proton or an atom or a compound or a person. So someplace inside of me as an individual, a quantum level of consciousness separated out of the infinite field of all possible vibrations and chose one vibration to form the foundation of who I am. And that foundation, as it resonates, does what all foundational resonances do in nature. They have harmonics and overtones that spin out of them that give them their timbre. Why a cello string sounds different than a banjo. It's the harmonic overtone structure. Why my voice sounds like me and not you. The tissue mass of my vocal cords is stamped with a harmonic pattern that can be identified from a satellite. That's how the government can tell who's on a cell phone, from a satellite. voice print analysis. You think your deep unconscious mind can't do the same thing, but better? So all of a sudden there could be a subconscious pattern recognition of the correct frequency that resets the button for the core control system of my body. That consciousness used as a frequency to self-organize the system and its harmonics and overtones in the first place. Essentially, I've come out of tune at my core. And if I strike the tuning fork, the ultimate tuning fork in the tune of me, then I resonate back to center and reestablish and break the vicious cycle of drifting too far. But if I see 1,000 people and find all their personal frequencies, people will fall on bell curves, right? There will be 80% of the people will respond to certain brainwave entrainment and soundtracks to boost creativity in theta, or boost the flow state at the borderline between alpha and theta, somewhere around 7.5 hertz. Most people will respond on a bell curve to the 7.83 hertz of the Schumann resonance as an entrainment frequency. So that's how I developed the whole series of soundtracks. We've got 90 soundtracks all over the world in all kinds of categories: creativity, meditation, healing, sleep. And a generic soundtrack will work for about 90% of the people. How do I extend 80%? By taking the brainwave frequencies and slowly drifting them back and forth through their range, so I catch more people. Right.
The level of sophistication you have is amazing, and the way all the different threads you're weaving together. I also want to, I know that you planned an experiential where we can take some of these theories and begin to experience it ourselves. I know we're going to have a chance to go much deeper in your upcoming program, but I think now would be a great time to lead people into a taste of the work you've been developing.
When you and I are talking together, we start to form something called a coupled oscillator pair, that we begin to oscillate together. If we're in physical proximity of each other where our electromagnetic fields can start to mix, then we'll start to synchronize our brain waves and heart rate and things like that. But that means that I could take a family and have everybody put headphones on and play one brainwave entrainment soundtrack that would align everybody's brainwaves together to exactly the same place, to multiply the effect of synchronizing up with another person. And historically, this has got big consequences. It's the idea of, we all understand that there's power in numbers, that the more of us who start to resonate to a new idea of what the world could be gives a better chance for that world to begin to manifest. And so now all of a sudden, if we have a whole group of people, like all the people here that are watching right now, if everybody's got headphones on and I play a soundtrack with brain entrainment and 3D processing and primordial sounds and all these layers of stuff that you're going to hear, everyone who listens to this today will be having their brain waves aligned exactly together to precisely the same place. And we will form a global mind link experience that links us all together into a bigger mind kind of idea. And we'll each have a personal experience of our own, which is pretty powerful. And that's what we're going to do now. As this soundtrack lasts for just about 7 minutes. So this is what can happen in 7 minutes. Headphones, if you've got them, because that gives a full 3D and binaural beat effect that causes synchronicity of the hemispheres. So here we go.
Wow. Well, that was beautiful sounds and very cosmic and sort of expansive for me at least. And I wonder if you can just share a little bit about what you've put into that track and what it's doing with our brainwaves.
Yeah, there's the science behind the sounds. So as a composer and a musician, the music itself should be putting you into the kind of state that we're trying to entrain you to. So there would be different kind of music associated with alpha versus the type of music you would expect with delta to put you into deep sleep. For the default mode, the reports coming through these PubMed studies, meditators were reporting cosmic consciousness experiences. If you think about the fact that default mode is my sense of self in time and space, right? Inside my skin, outside my skin, past and future. If I start hypersynchronizing, the boundaries start to get funky, get indistinct. Where the inside of my body ends and the universe begins to get fuzzy until I can't tell if the inside of my body is universally large or not. That's cosmic consciousness, sort of in space. Or the present moment begins to expand into all future and past events. That's sort of cosmic consciousness in time. But the science behind the sound of why my soundtracks are sort of different than everybody else's. I'm still composing the way that I used to in the beginning. I started out with reel-to-reel records before digital was invented. I layer tracks. I play manually on keyboards, and I lay a track down on track 1 and then play a different sound on a different keyboard on track 2 accompanying track 1 and track 3 and track 4. And some of these tracks are 30 tracks deep. Then there's something, then I have a patented method of brainwave entrainment that's different than what everybody else is doing. And that's sort of a long explanation, but everybody else uses 2 sine waves slightly out of tune. I don't use sine waves. I use frequency modulation and the harmonics of the sounds you hear. So that means that every place you go to listen to the soundtrack, whatever it's doing around you, every place you go to listen is involved in entraining your brainwaves. Whereas if you've got 2 sine waves and you're putting music on top of those sine waves to make them okay to listen to, because sine waves are man-made tones with no harmonics and they're not all that good to listen to. So you cover them over with music. The music is not entraining you. The sine waves are. So if we have no sine waves and the modulations are built inside the harmonics that make the instruments sound like what they are, then that's a way more subtle and sophisticated way of doing the same thing. Then there's hyper realistic 3D processing. I invented a whole method of 3D processing and stumbled on it by accident. That it also uses phase modulations between the 2 ears, but the phasing tricks the brain into thinking it's hearing 3D. It's actually manufacturing the 3D. So on that soundtrack with headphones, the 3D aspects of things moving around is all being created and manufactured by your brain. It's not on the soundtrack at all. It's not coming out of either of these 2 speakers. It's an interaction of the modulations that's going on in each speaker, crossing over and forcing the brain to do something. But that's a super powerful method of accessing one of the primary survival tools my brain uses to be alive with, which is 3D processing. 3D processing is important. So if I can control 3D processing and link that into brain entrainment, I've got a more powerful method for changing your state of consciousness. There's primordial sounds that are derived from the kind of sounds that anybody would respond to unconsciously, no matter what language you speak or culture you're brought up in. Like, for instance, womb sounds. all of us were baptized in water and sound and vibration for the 9 months of our first experience being alive. At 18 to 24 weeks, the brain development reaches a point where all 5 senses come online for the first time, but you're in the dark. You're floating in amniotic fluid, right? You're in a float tank, body temperature fluid. You're weightless. And your eyes are closed and you're in the dark, so that's not collecting information. Nose and mouth are filled with fluid. They're not collecting information. But sound travels through water 5 times better than air. It's actually amplified against your skin and into your eardrum. So the whole 9 months of my experience was a weightless experience of sound and vibration. So I think that's one of the reasons why sound is such a powerful tool to dig to the deepest part of your unconscious experience, because it's the very first thing you ever experience being alive.
Well, Jeffrey, this is, I mean, it's truly amazing and revelatory, just the level of synthesis of scientific and practical knowledge of music and acoustics and how that affects the brain. Really unique. And I'm realizing that we need to spend a little bit of time talking about how people take the next step and really experience and apply this in their lives in a deeper way. So we're really excited, based upon just how innovative and leading edge Jeffrey's work is, to be hosting a new program with him. It's called Behavioral Psychoacoustics: Create Inner Peace, Harmony, and Healing Through Evidence-Based Sound Practices. And it really takes a lot of the scientific understanding you're talking about today and turns it into practices that enable you to change in a substantial way. You can find the URL at behavioralpsychoacoustics.com. There's no punctuation in there, behavioralpsychoacoustics.com. It's a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites. It's really just if you feel intuitively drawn to explore deeper into this leading edge science and application of sonic technology and psychoacoustics. So, Jeffrey, I'd love for you to share in your own words about some of your intentions for what people come away from the program with, and then I'll read out the module titles and you give us a preview what's coming in each.
Sure. There are a lot of soundtracks out there, Brainwave entrainment soundtracks. It's difficult to know which ones are good and which ones are not good, or what's what, you know. So I think a in-depth understanding of what are binaural beats, how is it working on the brain, what is brain entrainment, why does it work, and how does it work, gives you an understanding to weed your way through the forest of things that are out there. Number two, the soundtracks that I've got on my website are a resource for all kinds of different things. Healing, boosting creativity, sleep. A lot of people have sleep problems. We're experts in sleep. We've been researched. This concept of using brain entrainment for entraining to specific desirable states, enhancing meditation, cutting through. That's pretty much the reason I've got that as a resource. And we're also here as a resource for you if you've got questions.
Great. So then let's go through the actual modules. So module 1 is called Unlock the Secrets of Sound to Enhance Your Healing Practice.
Yeah, how people use these soundtracks is personal, for you and your family. If you're a holistic practitioner, then the use of a high-tech approach to sound and entrainment can really enhance and boost everything. Because when the system is centered and no longer in this busy mind thing that usually has a negative dialogue, if you can cut that and bring the system back to the state of deep balance, then doors and windows open up to deeper places inside of me, which is exactly the place I'm trying to get to if I'm doing some kind of therapy. Energy work, chiropractic work, massage work, acupuncture work, whatever it is that you're up to, this helps. It makes it deeper. It makes it easier. The bigger sense of that is pushing the envelope of your personal meditation, or a yoga studio, or a meditation studio. Having a group of people doing yoga or in a meditation space with a soundtrack that claps you into this place, and does it with a group where there's power in numbers. then you can get to higher places of meditation that you could get to on your own when you're in a group that are meditating together.
Well, it sounds like you're jumping into module 2 there, which is practice entrainment to elevate your meditation practice.
Yes.
Then we also have module 3, discover the clinical applications of brainwave entrainment to activate your well-being.
Yeah. So for instance, the default mode network. Research report after report after report after report since 2001 have shown and proven that when the 4 zones of the default mode network come unsynchronized by any degree, that is every neurological condition you've ever heard of. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, PTSD, depression, you name it. All of those conditions have one condition underlying that they have in common. Desynchronizing of the 4 zones. All of a sudden we have a soundtrack that can resynchronize the 4 zones and help those conditions. Same thing with gamma. Gamma is associated with binding my 5 senses together into a single place. It's a reset for the whole cortex. It also is something that is shown in various neurological conditions to be a problem. You know, for instance, theta. Theta's got to do with emotional recuperation during sleep, or sleep itself, which is one of the big things that suffers worldwide because stress is the cause of disease. People can't sleep. So now you're going to use a soundtrack when you go to bed to entrain your brain waves down to the deepest stage of sleep, which is what you cut out when you're under stress, to recuperate that function and break that vicious cycle as well.
Module 4, experience acoustic pacing and nonlinear music to understand how sound influences physiological and emotional states.
A concept of nonlinear music is choosing the type of music that would go with each brain state. One of the things you have to avoid in what I mean by nonlinear music is music that is not obeying the kind of Western musical rules that we're all familiar with. Because if I compose music according to rules we're all familiar with, it keeps the mind engaged. And by definition, we're trying to get that mind disengaged with the music. So if the music has an A part and a B part and a chorus and an A part and a B part and a musical conclusion, my brain is continually is engaged by predicting what's going to come next and congratulating itself that it got it right. So you have to break every rule that you know of and create sort of a beautiful musical sound space. For me, I combine that with this hyper-realistic 3D thing, so things are moving around and access that aspect of the brain. And primordial sounds that wake up the deep unconscious mind. That's nonlinear music. That's what I mean by that. You're inventing a new type of music specifically to cut your mind free, so it's not obeying any rules except the rules that we impose, which is to make you better.
Great. Module 5, explore quantum acoustics and bioacoustic delivery systems for innovative healing techniques.
The more we understand about the importance of sound, the more your life changes. For instance, I was taught that the whole world is electromagnetic, that is photons. But the only thing that's not on the electromagnetic spectrum is sound. Sound is not electromagnetic. It's the second great force of the universe, the big yin-yang of electromagnetism and sound. Sound is pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency. It's pumping frequencies into your body that's pure energy. At a quantum level, we discussed a little bit about that. At the deepest stage of the quantum field is something resonating. And it's resonating because of sound. Sound is a funny word because we all think of sound as being what we can hear with this little ear here, 20 to 20,000 hertz. But the pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency below 20 hertz or above 20,000 hertz is still sound, but it doesn't have that word anymore. But nobody invented a word to describe it. Below, it's brain frequencies, states of consciousness. Higher, it's something else that we don't know what, but it's there. If we slow the frequencies down too much, it would become gravity waves. that appear to be frozen in time and space, but they're just slow moving compared to our time scale. It's sound waves. It's powerful. It's the very first thing that ever happened to us in the womb. Extremely powerful.
Very cool. Module 6 then goes into uncover esoteric anatomy and physiology.
When we start to explain why would sound have any effect on me, what's going on? What's the interface between these sound waves, pure energy moving through a medium? I'm the medium, right? If I'm on a sound chair or a sound table and sound waves are coming through my body, I'm the medium. Those little sand patterns that you see on the plate that form patterns with sound are in all the cells of my body. It's in the water of my body forming those patterns. Why and how does sound affect my brain function? How does this brain entrainment thing work? Really, once you understand that, you begin to understand that a brainwave entrainment soundtrack is only as good as who knows what they're doing to create the music and manipulate the beats. They're so powerful that sort of anybody can do it. They may not know what they're doing, and you'll have a cool response, or maybe not, I don't know. But to be educated about this puts you in a unique position over anybody else. And sound is a rising thing in the world right now. It's on the tips of everybody's tongue, and nobody really knows what's going on there. So I think it's a good time to give a good scientific explanation about what's going on. And when you understand that, you understand something more about yourself that you didn't know before. Self-knowledge opens up doorways to self-experience aside from the chatterbox in my brain. It's a meditation of its own.
Great stuff. And then finally, we conclude with Module 7, applied bioacoustic concepts to transform lives in real-world settings.
That's where we have access to soundtracks in a number of different categories to help my life work better. If I can't sleep, or if I want to boost my creativity, or if I want to help my meditation, or if I'm studying in school, I can boost memory and learning. I now have sort of a whole library of abilities that I can tap and enhance using the power of sound and entrainment in a way that's never been done before, sort of a clinical application of sound for healing. Or if I have various conditions like we had talked about before, there are known brainwave frequency deficiencies that we can retrain, like the default mode network or gamma or things like that. It gives you tools that you didn't have before. But a tool is only as good as a person who knows how to use that tool. So this whole idea is, how does this system work? How does the sound thing work? How does the brain entrainment thing work? Why am I responding to that? And when I find out why, I learn something deep about myself that changes me. It really is. It changes me. And then there is the aspect of the wider influence that I talked about before, the concept of aligning with other people in meditation group, listening to the same soundtrack together for causing a group meditation mind link. There's power in numbers. It's a healing circle. You put one person in the middle who's got a problem with all of their close friends and relatives in a circle around them. Everybody's listening to the same soundtrack, and you're focusing your attention on healing this person. This is powerful stuff. It's ancient stuff. It's just modernized into the 21st century that gives us better tools to focus that power in ways that we never had before.
Well, clearly you are brilliant and at the leading edge of this important area of psychoacoustics. So we're really excited for this program. Again, more detail at behavioralpsychoacoustics.com. So you'll get, if you choose to move forward with the program, you'll get the 7 90-minute live sessions with Jeffrey, which are going to be packed with important information, as well as interactive exercises and Q&A time. You also get recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts to study and highlight. There's weekly exercises for home. There's a Facebook community to support you and deepen your community experience. And on the page, you'll see a number of extra bonuses as well. There's an audio from Jeffrey called the Creative Mind System. There's also a video teaching from Jeffrey called Scientific Use of Sound to Heal and Change Consciousness. And there's a really robust third bonus that is actually 5 bonuses in one. This is our special bonus that comes when you sign up right away by midnight Pacific time. It's actually a series of 5 audios from Jeffrey called the Delta Sleep System. And Jeffrey, you want to share a little bit about that Delta Sleep System? That's our special bonus that folks get today if they sign up.
Yeah, I actually created that one because my son, when he was a baby, wouldn't sleep, and I wasn't sleeping. So I created this soundtrack for sleep. And then when I tried to listen to it as an audio engineer, I couldn't hear it all the way through. I actually literally fell off my chair in the recording studio with headphones on. And then I thought, oh, it's such a great soundtrack and nobody will ever hear it. So me as an artist and a composer, nobody will ever hear my work. But then it became a huge success because sleep is such a big problem in the world. It was researched at the Royal Ottawa Sleep Research Center in Canada, 95% effective for pathologic sleep disorders. It was taken up by Time Life at one point, and they shot an infomercial and showed it on primetime for 2 years. It was a huge success. But sleep is such a big problem because stress is the ultimate cause of disease. And if you know anything about what you're doing with the kind of music that you should compose in order to put you to deep sleep, nonlinear music is being one of the things that you have to do. Delta, deep physical recuperation portion of sleep is what tends to get missing. So we nail it right down to there. It's a very cool soundtrack. You put it on at night in your bedroom. Make sure you've got stereo speakers. No reason to have headphones on. Just the soundtrack in the bedroom will knock you out.
Well, what a great extra bonus. And that pays so many dividends to have that Delta Sleep System. So really amazing program. And clearly you can tell from today that Jeffrey's just a fountain of fascinating insights and really the leading edge of this discipline. So we've kept the investment very accessible, given all that, for just 3 payments of $128, or you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. You can join the course. The course is going to begin on November 18th and run Mondays at 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value of the recordings and transcripts in the community as well. There's also some just amazing testimonials on the page. Dr. Jeff has mastered communicating mind-blowing concepts into understandable language. It just goes on and on. So I encourage you to check out some of those testimonials of the power of his work and get more detail on the program at behavioralpsychoacoustics.com. And if you sign up today, you'll get that whole Delta Sleep System for free as a bonus. So you're in great hands, and you will experience an amazing adventure at the frontiers of your brain and consciousness, and open up new possibilities for how sound can really make a difference in your life. So Jeffrey, what a fascinating time together. Thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. Anything that's still on heart you want to share with folks who are considering doing the whole behavioral psychoacoustics program with you?
You know, there's no way to know what kind of new frontiers happen when you learn something new, particularly if what you're learning has got to do with who you are and how you function, and maybe more deeply understanding why you're not functioning the way you would like to function. Those questions have answers. Sound, for some reason, has been the most primary tool in every culture on earth for cutting through to the deepest part, whether it's Tibetan bowls or shamanic drumming practices or Chinese meditation gongs or chant or om. It really has stood the test of time. So to really understand why is a deep search in yourself. Something happens to you when you understand it.
Very cool. Well, Jeffrey, thank you for your wisdom, and thank you all for joining. And if you'd like to go further, you can do so at behavioralpsychoacoustics.com, and you'll get the special Delta Sleep System if you sign up at midnight tonight. So thank you so much.
Thanks.